All right, and we're going to start out with introductions, and I think most of us know most of us, but not everybody. And what I'd really like you to mention as you introduce yourself is your connection to the county or to governance, so to speak. So I'll start. Tricia Crowley, I'm president of the League of Women Voters, and we're sponsoring or conducting this task force. And I'll get into why in a little bit. And I worked as an assistant state's attorney from 1979 to 91, doing civil work, in other words, advising county officials. And in the mid 80s, as a result of working with county officials, I went out and got a degree in public administration because I figured there had got to be a better way of doing this. So I'm not sure how much it helped, but it was, I think, an indication of what state the county was in, at least back then. So, so that's my story. And Deb, you want to take it next?
Sure, I'm Deb Busey, and I worked for the county for 40 some years. I think it ended up being 1 or 2. I worked in the state's attorney's office when Tricia was there, and began learning a lot about the county board and some of the governance issues there. And then I became county administrator, co-administrator first in 98, and then single administrator in 2009. And I was the last county administrator because the voters approved the elected executive form of government in 2016. I went back to be, I retired in 2016, went back to be interim administrator in 18 because the county board, the replacement for me left, seeing the handwriting on the wall. And so I filled in that last year that we had a county administrator. I've seen questions come and go on the ballots for the voters, and voters rarely know what they're voting on or what the issues are, which is why when Tricia and I first started talking about this study, it is so very interesting to me that we might be able to put together information that if questions in the future come up about the structure of county government, that maybe the league can share with the voters more and better information about what the impact of those potential changes are.
Just a little bit of league background. The league can't speak on a public issue unless it has taken a position. It has formally adopted a statement in support or opposing some kind of policy. And the process for taking a position is called a consensus study process. And this will be part of the league's consensus study process, hopefully resulting in a position from which we can take a public position on any kind of ballot measures that come up. Okay, Steve, how about you?
I'm Steve Beckett. I'm an attorney in private practice in Urbana. I'm a lifelong Champaign County resident. I was on the county board from 2000 to 2010. While on the county board, I was vice chair for 1 term, I think like 4 to 6. I was the facilities chairman the entire 10 years. I was county board parliamentarian, which made me very popular. While I was on the county board, I tried to reach out and work with community groups. I worked with the Farm Bureau. I worked with the Building Trades Council. I actually worked with the League of Women Voters as well. I've done quite a bit of collaboration with the League of Women Voters when I was on the faculty at the College of Law. We had a court watching program that the league had started that I carried throughout the time I was teaching at the law school. I've got really good relationships with former county board members. We talk about county board all the time, particularly Al Nudo and I are really good friends that I met while I was on the county board. So I'm very interested in the issues that this committee is presenting.
Okay, Kathleen?
Yeah, I'm the least qualified, actually. I'm here to learn. My career was at the University of Illinois, and so we watched the county from afar. And it's a very interesting body, and it has been quite It has changed quite a bit over the years. Deb would know that better than anybody. And I'm very interested in how we can help our county government be more collaborative and perhaps more efficient, and perhaps more open to community input. But I'm here to learn. So thank you for including me.
Okay. Lynn?
Well, I think
Oh,
Kathleen
Julie,
is
sorry.
not the least qualified. My interaction with the county primarily was during my time with United Way and working with some of the programs through RPC. But I've certainly been an interested observer of what goes on in the county. United Way still, and we did this during my tenure, every 3 years, I believe it is, does a community survey, and it's a lot of statistical information that that we honestly hope would drive some of the policies and some of the services offered, and that sometimes has been the case and sometimes not. So Kathleen, we're both we both have limited qualifications.
But excellent people for giving advice, I'll say that. Lynn?
Lynnlynn Warfall. I'm a farmer in southern Champaign County on a centennial farm. My family's always been interested in government at all levels. So my career has been in farming, but kind of two other careers, one with Farm Bureau and Farm Policy. And that has caused me to interact with the county on a number of occasions. And then education. I've had another career with education at the preschool, K-12, community college, and university levels. Still keenly interested in what's going on with those groups. But I've been around for a long time now. I'm 80 years old and been around the state and been around the country and been around the world. And I think Champaign County is one of the finest places in the world, but there are places where we could be doing so much better than we are. And one of those is politics, and specifically county government. We're stumbling along and we should be sailing. And so this opportunity to kind of tickle what's going on is really interesting to me, and I'm looking forward to it. And I do have one problem. Saturday, I'm going to Bermuda for a week to help celebrate our second daughter's 30th wedding anniversary. And I'm not sure if I can log on from Bermuda, but I will certainly try.
Okie doke. Anne?
I was actually employed by the county for about 8 years when I was serving first as an assistant public defender and then as head of the office, and then became an associate judge and served for 13 years and then happily retired. The thing about the county government that always amazed me is how many very intelligent, otherwise very involved citizens know absolutely nothing about the county government, why it exists and what it does. And I can't count how many times I was asked by people, well, what does the county board do? Why should we care? And this is truly serious, I think, because I think most of our population remains in ignorance. God knows how they decide how to vote when an election comes along. It's a mystery. So that's my shtick. Yeah.
Okay. We have two members who are not here today, but Sam Banks and Jerry Kirchner, and hopefully we'll see them in the future. So
Sam is on a retirement trip in Hawaii, so that's why he's not here.
well, we wouldn't want to.
Bermuda, Hawaii,
Yeah.
what am I missing here?
Something.
I think the rest of us have to up our game and find places.
I want to be clear about what our goal is. There are lots of different issues we could be talking about with the county, but we want to be very specific about what issues it is that we are going to be talking about here. And we'll be focusing on governance issues, and basically 3 governance issues. One is the form of the county board, which by statute, there's 3 possibilities for the county board form. One is the elected executive, which we have right now. The other is a county board with a county board chair elected from its members, which was the form up until 2016 election, 2018 implementation. And the other is a county board with a county-wide elected board chair. In each of these different forms, the power of the board chair, the power of the county executive, what they can do, how they can do it is different. And that's one of the things that we want to study is which one is the best for functioning in this particular county. And although there was an election for the looking at 2 different forms, the county executive and the county-wide board chair in 2016, it's certainly possible for the issue to come up again, and we want to be prepared for, if there is such a discussion, we want to be prepared for reasons why one form might be better than the other. The other issue, another issue we're looking at is whether optionally elected county board officials should be elected or appointed. And the 2 which are mostly at issue is coroner and auditor. Some of the other positions which you might think could be considered for this change of form would be sheriff, treasurer, and county clerk, but by constitutional provision, those offices must be elected. So we're not going to look at the question of whether the Illinois Constitution should be changed, and we'll limit ourselves to whether presently elected offices should actually be appointed. We've gone through that process recently with the recorder. So, and the other 2 have appeared on the ballot before, and we anticipate they may well appear on the ballot again. And the other question I think that we'll look at is how many members and districts might be recommended for a good functioning county board. We've just gone through a redistricting process, and it won't come up again for 10 years, but we want to look at that question, I guess, in order to be prepared in 10 years, because we'll be around. And also, I think it's helpful that it is not going to be contentious right now, because in fact, it's 10 years in the future before it comes up again. I don't think that that issue will be highly contentious in terms of Democrat and Republican politics, hopefully not. So those are the 3 things we're going to address. There are lots of others that are possible, issues of what kinds of functions the county board, the county itself does, or how the county is funded and how the different offices it funds are where the revenue comes from. But those are mostly statutory provisions, almost entirely. And so we're not going to look at that right now at any rate, because it would require some legislative.
Well, except for maybe home rule for the county, Trish, because the elected executive form of government does allow the voters to select home rule if they want to.
Yeah, yeah.
Which is a question I think we might expect from the county board in the next few years. So that would be one issue when we're looking at the countywide board chair, county board chair elected from among the board or elected executive. That's one issue that will probably be taken into consideration in looking at those options.
Right, right. Is there any question about that or really any kind of discussion?
Well, do you not expect the challenges in the Illinois Supreme Court to prevail regarding the election, regarding precinct and so forth?
I don't know that anyone is challenging our specific county redistricting. Yeah. The state redistricting process is being challenged, but I don't think that that's really going to have much impact on this. Okay. Each jurisdictional body basically does its own redistricting according to its own rules. And so not sure that there would be much impact except for guidelines, which would be helpful if we were redistricting. But there's a lot out there already, so I don't think that's going to change a whole lot. Anything else?
Trish, this just a question. You mentioned at the beginning that people don't really know what the county does, what it funds, the kinds of services it provides. Is there some simple, comprehensive list that the league could put together as an educational initiative, or is that not our job?
In terms of funding, Deb, has certainly a good grasp on the budget, which is where, if it's funded, it's going to come through the budget one way or another. So I think that's certainly possible. Deb, what do you think?
I think that's a good idea. And you also got to start on it with the PowerPoint presentation that we put together that we're going to look at our next meeting, which at least looks at what are the services that the county board provides specifically only to the citizens in the unincorporated areas of the county, because other citizens get those services from cities or municipalities. And what are the services that the county board is responsible for providing to the entire county? So yeah, I think having a basic overview of that could be very helpful in educating voters. And then what Trish is talking about is it's dependent on funding. And interestingly, sometimes the county board goes beyond what they're mandated to fund and will fund, additional initiatives as well. So that's always an interesting question too. So yeah, I think those are good points that we could work on.
Steve?
I have a historical question. I was actively involved in the campaign, the referendum campaign about the change in form of government. And there were 2 ballot questions that were put on the ballot and they both passed. And we ended up with the form that we currently have. Can you explain to me how that fits in the 3 forms that Trish was talking about? I can't get my head around what the difference was between the 2, both of which passed. And I suspected at the time that people were dissatisfied with what they thought the county board was doing. And so everybody voted for both of them without having any sort of intelligent distinction between them. And now I can't even tell you the distinction between them. So somebody give me that history. I think it would be helpful for our group, for our whole group.
The elected executive is actually another layer of elected official in county government. So the elected executive is not in any way part of the county board. So a lot of the responsibilities that previously belonged solely to the county board like development of the budget and development of personnel policies and implementation of those policies for managing the workforce, those responsibilities all now belong to the elected executive instead of to the county board. With a countywide elected board chair, that individual also would not vote on issues before the board like the elected executive doesn't. Their voting is the same, but the countywide elected county board chair is still considered part of the county board. So what has happened since we've had the elected executive, if you paid attention, not all board members were happy about it. And basically, the elected executive was excluded from a lot of the county board's work. She was excluded from some of the from committees because the only reference in the statute is that the elected executive presides at county board meetings. Well, you know, and most of us know, most of the county board's work gets done in committee, not at the county board meeting. And the county board was not including the elected executive in any of their committee meetings or anything like that. A countywide elected board chair is considered part of the board. He is the chair of the board. The elected executive is not in any way the chair of the board or the director of the board. And so that's where there's a little bit, there's a separation that occurs with the elected executive that does not occur with the countywide elected board chair. And the other thing about the election in 2016, just in case you don't know, it was the countywide elected board chair question passed by like 58 or 59%. The elected executive question passed by just a little over 50%. But because the elected executive passed, and it's a change in the form of government, it took precedence over the countywide elected county board chair question, which is why we ended up with that instead.
Thank you.
Okie doke. There are many, many, many questions about the financing of county board, county services, the county revenues that support the judicial system and the courthouse and that kind of thing that are really important questions. But again, they're basically statutory and we're not going to go there, although I think some of the lack of best function is caused by some of those funding issues and revenue streams that are not predictable and not under the control of the people who are spending it, basically. So, so there may be more that we're not doing than that we are doing, but I think that we're taking a pretty good chunk of some of the most likely questions that come up in referenda form, which is where the league can speak out and impact elections. So Deb, why don't you go over the proposed study process and then the timeline?
Okay, so for our task force, and we'll look at it more in depth at our next meeting, we've put together a request for qualifications for us to hire a consultant who will objectively look at these questions on our behalf with regard to what is the best option under the statutes, for example, for the auditor's office, for the coroner's office, for the county board. So one of our first projects as a task force is going to be to hire a consultant, and we're also going to need to raise the funds to pay for the consultant because that is something that we believe will probably go beyond the current means of our education fund, which is where we're hoping to pay for that study. We would like to be able to pay for the study with contributions or donations from interested parties, businesses who want to see this done so that we can move forward. So in the early stages, a big part of what we will do revolves around that. Once the consultant is hired, which we hope occurs about the 1st of November,
Can I interrupt here? When Deb and I were discussing this process, the issue of how to judge what is a good alternative came up, and sometimes, and certainly in the referendum we've seen in the past, it's been based on what you might call speculative opinion about what might happen if we change from one to the other. What we wanted to do here was to get beyond speculation, to have some sort of basis for having a stronger opinion about what is actually most likely, or what from a professional organizational development kind of point of view would be the result of one form or another. And we saw this in the recent election for abolishing the recorder position. All of the questions we got had to do with, well, what does this mean? What will happen? And without any real answers, people were really uncomfortable, I think, making decisions in the absence of any kind of real facts or policy. And so we decided that starting out with a professional consultant's opinion about what these things mean is a good basis for looking for the task force making its decision. What we do not expect is that what the consultant says is what we're going to, is going to be what we agree with. It's going to be the basis for our discussion about what would be the best forms and what would be the best choices. But
yeah, we hope to hire a consultant who's a business development expert, in which case they may not, what we really want them to do is give us the best business development options for any of the options that we're looking at, because then ultimately we would, decide what is the best avenue for moving forward. Steve?
So has a study like this been done in any county in Illinois? We used to compare, Rock Island and Peoria. We used to compare those counties. Are we just shooting in the dark? Do we have any idea how much money we need?
We are kind of shooting in the dark. We've estimated based on some other consultant studies, but not one like this. We're hoping for about $30,000. We won't know for sure until we, get responses to our RFQ. Has any other county done anything like this? Steve, I don't think anyone has, since Lake County did it, and that was like 1990. Okay. It was a long time ago. But we are, for the consultant's sake, in the RFQ, limiting what they look at to the counties that are closest in size and economic environment to us. So Sangamon, Peoria, St. Clair, McLean, and then we're also including DeKalb because it has a university, and then we're including Will because they have an elected executive.
Okay. Follow up, is there any grant funding opportunities?
Not that we're aware of.
Okay.
We are starting with sort of a nest egg, so to speak, of $10,000, so it's not quite as much of a mountain as
Deb, is this task force going to review the RFQ? Are you asking for advice about that?
Absolutely. So at our next meeting, you all have received a copy of the RFQ. And at our next meeting, we'll hope to discuss that a little more length. If you have suggestions or edits or ideas about how it should be presented, we want to know that for our next meeting. And then shortly after that, we'll release it. But yes, we envision we need to have at least a subset of the task force to evaluate the responses that we get. And I think, Trish, if everyone on the task force wanted to do that, that would be fine too, right?
Right.
We don't want to exclude anyone on the task force, but if we get 10 responses and they're all very, what responses to RFQs can be like, but anyone who wants to help us with the evaluation, we would really appreciate getting that assistance. So back to the timeline. So getting the RFQ out, and again, if anyone on this task force has ideas about businesses to whom it could be sent, let me know. We're talking to IML and some other government officials to see if they have any ideas about who are the best responders for this RFQ. And then when we get it back, evaluating the responses that we get, we built into the time frame an opportunity for presentations by the respondents if we think we need that. The goal is that we would have a contract with a consultant by about the 1st of November. And that through the months of November, December, and January, when we would ask that the report be completed in January, that the task force during those months would be meeting with the consultant just to get project updates and to see what's going on, what questions may come up that hadn't been anticipated, for the task force to be able to give them direction, things of that nature.
What about the Institute of Government Public Affairs?
Yeah, I was going to contact them just to see if they have anyone. Earlier this year, there was the Geist School of Business. They have these projects for students. Almost wondered if that wasn't a potential, but I think we need someone. Hopefully we're going to be able to hire someone who has some experience in government, as well as good organizational development experience.
I wasn't necessarily thinking about them as consultants as I was as a way to get the word out.
Yeah.
Organizations about the project. And I think both GEIS and IGPA would be good outlets. They have their own distribution lists where they send out.
Yeah, that's a good idea, Steve.
I have a question. I'm hearing hope to be able to sign a contract and get someone working, but is the idea then that you're going to raise the $20,000 in order to be able to hire this person?
Yes. The idea is that we need to raise that money, have a commitment for that money before we would sign a contract. However much the consultant contract ends up costing, that we need to know we have commitments for that funding in the time frame in which we'll need it to move forward.
And do we have any commitments yet?
We have one commitment for $10,000.
Okay.
And from there, that's another thing that for talking with this task force is to come up with strategies and ideas for how we can fundraise for this, who we can talk to, where are the possible sources for raising this money.
Have you thought about speaking to the local civic groups?
Like
Rotary, Exchange Club, Kiwanis, that group?
Yeah, we've thought about them. We've thought about both the chamber and the Farm Bureau. I don't know, but we thought we would at least approach them. It's a matter.
What about Building Trades Council?
Yeah, that's why you all are here, to help us brainstorm about who should we talk to and who are the best representatives of our group to send to talk to those different entities. Yeah. But yeah, those are all good.
Lynn should speak to Farm Bureau.
Yeah, I think so too.
And
you should speak to the building trades.
Farm Bureau does have money available for some things like this. I'm certainly not in a position to be able to commit anything, but there is some money there. And I'm certainly willing to talk to folks about that.
I think we as a group need to strategize that a little bit. And from my experience, I don't have much experience in fundraising to know, to put together our story, what we're going to say, how we're going to communicate it whenever we're approaching anyone about making an ask for some funding.
Well, it's almost like the clock tower, Deb.
Yeah.
I mean, you need to get a couple of big hit gifts up front so that you can say, we have this amount of commitment already.
Mhm.
And, you know, a citizen's commitment of $500 towards good county government, you know, that kind of thing. And then we'll put your name on the clock.
Right. Yeah.
Well, I think that in addition to organizations, clearly this project is going to resonate with members of the League of Women Voters. So I think pretty much out the gate, you have to go to that group and ask if they would be willing to make a contribution.
Yeah, totally
Is this-
agree.
I'm sorry, Judge, go ahead.
I was just wondering, what's the extent right now of the League's commitment? Is there, at what point has it been discussed and with whom? And I guess I'm asking what the authority is for us to go ahead and assume they're going to support it.
At the last general meeting, the league voted to do a consensus study on this issue. And so, and we have done several presentations about county governance issues to the league members. So, so from the question of whether to do a study on this issue that we've gotten the appropriate league vote. Yeah.
So you mentioned at the next meeting that we're going to have that there's a PowerPoint presentation.
Yeah.
Is that the kind of talking piece that can be used for the kind of groups that Lynn and I are talking about?
It's probably too long for that.
Okay.
I prepared it, and it's actually on the league website right now. You can look at it, but we probably need to focus something much shorter for talking to people about issues. Go into a lot of the history of.
I understand. Well, I think you need a history, and I think you need we have a problem. As Lynn and I both agree, we have a problem. And are there solutions to the problem? We want in a meaningful way to find solutions to the problem. It's that kind of structure.
Yeah.
So we're going to look at the presentation next week or the next meeting with the idea that you, with all of your different points of view about the county, should be able to improve it. But then we need to, as I say, prepare something that's much shorter for use with asking people for money.
Yeah.
Okay, and again, we're not signing any contracts until we have the money commitment.
Right.
Makes sense.
Yeah, right.
Could be my strong recommendation.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So moving forward with the timeline then, once we get the consultant study back, and the goal is that would be in January, that the task force would meet a couple times in January and in early February to formulate a position based on the consultant report that we would recommend. And then in March, we would like to have at least three public forums to present this information and to get feedback from the public about, the strategies that we're looking at and recommending. I think that's basically how we had thought it would work, right, Trish?
Yeah.
And then in April, based on feedback from the public forums, we would formalize a recommendation that would go to the league at a regular or annual meeting in May. So it's kind of how our timeline looks at this point.
So if in fact the recommendation involved the presentation of a referendum for voter action, does this timeline permit getting those on the ballot for the November 22 election?
We're thinking yes, because if we got it approved in May, we have June, July, and August to get signatures on petitions to get.
Or to seek a county board resolution to put it on the ballot.
Right. Yeah. Either one of those.
Okay.
So, some things, some aspects of it, like the redistricting, is not, likely to be immediately, subject to public conversation and decision making, but
Sure.
others would be pertinent, certainly.
Right. And the redistricting questions, I agree with Trish. I mean, since we're doing this study anyway, it's a good time to look at it, because if the real recommendations, and there's a lot of public feedback that supports it, that says, yeah, the county board should be, 13 single member districts, or 14 multi-member districts, whatever. It certainly would give the county board time to get used to that idea and maybe actually move in that direction, because ultimately those are decisions that they make. Those questions are advisory only anyway, but if we have a study that supports making some change there, maybe a future county board would actually take it to heart. And certainly we could keep it out there as a league as a direction that future board members who are running for election could, stand on. So.
Okay, we're moving along really, really well.
Yeah.
You guys don't have enough questions. So you have the RFQ, Deb sent that along. And so at the next meeting, we're going to look at have any questions of the RFQ, and also look at the PowerPoint on county government.
And I'll try to have an update about where we're hoping to get the RFQ published. But again, any additional ideas or thoughts that any of you have about what are a good way to get the RFQ out would be very helpful.
I assume that under the present circumstances, you'd like to continue meeting via Zoom. Is anyone?
Well, if we're going to meet in the library and we all have to wear masks, I'm not for that.
Yeah, I think that
I'm just not for that. Having been at meetings where everybody wears a mask, I'd rather meet in a Zoom. I don't like Zoom. I'd rather meet in person. But if I have to meet where I have to wear a mask, I can't tell if you're smiling or snarling.
yeah, I think Zoom is the preferred vehicle for this conversation.
Well, I'll keep you up to date. As I say, the library has reimposed a mask mandate, and if they eliminate it, then I'll bring up the question again.
From my perspective, kind of the elephant in the room is the university. And as far as governance is concerned and precincts are concerned, I'm 100% in favor of the university. Myself, my wife, and two of my kids graduates there. But anyway, it has a huge impact on the county as far as districting is concerned. The 50,000 students, a substantial part of them are voting age, and a substantial part of them are actually foreign students who are not citizens, but are considered in redistricting. So just one example of the 10,800 foreign students, that's more people, more heads to count than a group of the villages in the county. So how do you balance, how that gets balanced is a really huge question going forward over the next 10 years and farther. I think that should be looked at some point as far as governance is concerned. Because if you don't have a solid basis in the structure, nothing else is going to work quite right. So I think that's a fair question.
No, I think Lynn, speaking of the university and students who vote, that's another argument for putting together a simple, compelling list of how valuable the county is to their lives. We need to educate them.
Sure. Yeah.
We've got 10 years to do it, Lynn.
We can't start now because all the students will be gone in 10 years.
Exactly.
Whatever. Okay, I'm not going to keep you just because we set this time. Are there any other questions right now?
Or
Somehow,
suggestions?
somehow you need to have our major media sources aware as quickly as possible of your goal, of the task force and your goals.
Mm-hmm.
And also to anticipate that when that happens, there will also be, I would imagine, a political blowback from parties.
Before we started this process, we talked to the county executive and the heads of the Democratic and Republican parties in terms of telling them that we were about to embark on this process, and we didn't receive any overt verbal disagreement at any rate.
Would you think that maybe the best place to start is the editorial board, Steve?
Yes, probably. I think if the News Gazette, as a matter of editorial policy, would support the task force work and the goal of the league as a concept, it would go a long way.
Mm-hmm.
So Deb and I will do that, and at least reach out certainly before the next meeting.
Good.
I'm a huge fan of Abraham Lincoln. I've read quite a few books on him, studied him. And his basic process was 3 points. Where are we? Where do we want to go? And how do we get there? And so I think there's plenty of angst around in the county about where we are. A lot of dissatisfaction by groups and by individuals with where we are. So that is a nerve that we could touch to draw money in to fund this project. And I'd be happy to try to help work with that. But where we are is way short of where our goals should be. And then having the goals that you have partially identified here sounds really good to me. So then it's a matter of how to get there. Honestly, I don't have a great deal of faith currently in the county board and how much energy to try to spend with the county board. I'm questionable. So I personally would look higher at what other states are doing. We're not the only state that has counties like Champaign where there's a big university. So other states may have some ideas too, and a good consultant would look around more than just the state of Illinois.
Yeah, the constraint there, Lynn, is as usually that a lot of this is required by statute. So to make a change in our specific county government would require changing the statute for all Illinois counties, and I am not sure we're aiming at that goal.
But would home rule alter that at all, Trish? And if so, how?
Yeah, that would be a good question, and I suspect that not many people know the answer to that.
Home rule really just has an effect on the county board's ability to raise taxes. They don't have to go to the voters. For example, if they wanted to, a 1/4 cent public sales tax is allowed by the law. If the county were home rule, the county board can simply vote to implement another 1/4 cent sales tax. Currently, they can't do that without going to the voters with a referendum to ask for approval. I don't think home rule changes any of the statutory requirements about the elected officials or anything like that. It most basically impacts funding. And it's a question that I know the majority party is very interested in putting on the ballot in November of 2022. And it has to be an elected executive form of government for home rule to be an option. And if you look at the village of Savoy, they recently adopted it, but I really think that's a function of the fact that Savoy has to compete with Champaign and Urbana and kind of at the municipal level. And without being home rule, Savoy didn't really have that competitive edge, and their voters gave it to them. I find it hard to believe, but I'm just an individual with an individual opinion, that all the voters of Champaign County would agree to give the county board that home rule ability to, raise taxes based on their own decisions. Just because I don't think the county board has a reputation as being the most responsible form of government in Champaign County. So, but that's definitely going to be an issue when looking at elected executive versus the county board chair forms of government. There's one other home rule county in the state of Illinois, and it's Cook. And they get home rule by statute. So
By constitution, I think, actually.
Yeah.
Okie doke. We'll see you all in a couple of weeks, and take a look at the RFP or RFQ, and we'll look forward to learning some more about county government through some information PowerPoint. Okay. Any
Thank
other
you.
questions?
Thank you, Trish.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Trish.